Well, good afternoon. Great to be here in Collier County in Immokalee. I want to thank Dr. Ken Scheppke, Chief Medical Officer, Division of Emergency Management, as well as Representative Mello. So thank you so much. Today, we're happy to announce that starting tomorrow morning, here at the Winn Dixie in Immokalee, there will be a monoclonal antibody treatment site open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It will be capable of treating more than 300 patients every single day. And so again, starting tomorrow morning at 0900, this site will be open for up to 320 patients every single day. We also will, starting tomorrow, up in North Florida in Leon County and Tallahassee at the Governor's Square Mall at the old Sears building. That will also be open starting tomorrow. And so once that happens, we will have 21 different sites throughout the state of Florida, and each one of those sites can do more than 300 treatments every day. I've had a lot of success with this. This is, we spent a lot of time in Southwest Florida and others doing the vaccine distribution for many, many months. Obviously, you have a lot of people, millions and millions of people have done that. That is to try to prevent, ideally to prevent infection, but certainly that if you do get infected, to protect you against severe illness. But that's on kind of the preventive end. This monoclonal antibody, the Regeneron, is, okay, if you are infected, what are your early treatment options? And so this is something that you do by and large once you're infected. It is approved for prophylaxis, and in certain high-risk situations like a nursing home, you can go in affirmatively and do that, and we have done that and will continue to do it. But generally speaking, this is something that will be for people who have contracted COVID, and that's both vaccinated and unvaccinated, because in Florida, the very vulnerable people, by and large, are all vaccinated, and it is helping. But if they get infected, they still have this option as well. And so if you come in, you can get it either in the with an IV or a subcutaneous with injections. It's most of the stuff that we're doing is mostly going to be subcutaneous. They think all the sites probably offer IV, but that you got to be hooked onto that for an hour. Whereas with the shots, you're talking about a matter of minutes to be able to do that. But if you do have COVID and you contract it, coming in and getting this treatment early has been very effective at resolving the symptoms, keeping people out of the hospital, and saving lives. And so we've now we'll have 21 sites. So we have them in Okaloosa County. We have it in Panama City. We'll have it starting tomorrow in Tallahassee. We have one in Pasco County, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County. We have one in Manatee. We have one in Charlotte. We have one in Bonita Springs, right here in Collier. We have one in Polk County. We have one in Orlando and Orange County. We have one at the Villages in Sumter County, one in Alachua County, and then on the east coast of Florida, we have Jacksonville, Ormond Beach, Merritt Island, St. Lucie County, West Palm Beach, Pembroke Pines, and Miami-Dade. So that's 21 sites, up to 320 a pop. This has been approved for emergency use the same time, basically, that the Pfizer and the Moderna received emergency use authorization last year. Obviously, most attention was on that. This was, though, something that has been administered in Florida through most of our hospital systems for the whole time since December of 2020. And actually, even before then, we had some hospital systems that were doing different types of trials on this. And so this has been a part. And a lot of people have gotten it. However, became pretty clear to us as we started to see more and more people get admitted to the hospital this summer, most of these folks didn't even know about the ability to get a monoclonal antibody. And so when we looked at the hospital census, when we talked to different health systems, they said, well, one, the vast majority of the people that were being admitted were not vaccinated, and but then the 90% of the people admitted didn't get the monoclonal prior to being admitted to the hospital. So we saw that there was a need to raise the visibility of this, but also expand access to it, simply because a lot of the hospitals, if they're doing the IV, because they started doing IV before it was approved for subcutaneous, so they'll have only so many people they can have on that. It takes a couple hours each person with soup to nuts. And so we knew, hey, as more people know about this, we want to make sure that people have options to be able to do it. It had been up to this point, before we set up our sites, you needed a referral from a physician to be able to go. You don't need that now because we have a standing order from the Surgeon General of Florida saying that you can come in. Obviously, you have to meet the criteria for emergency use, but that criteria is relatively broad. And so you can come in. You don't need to get a prescription to be able to come here and get it. And again, both clinical trial data and real world shows a significant reduction in high-risk people who then don't need to be hospitalized and hospitalization. So that's really what we're trying to do. We understand when you have something that's airborne like a Delta, people are going to be exposed to it, and you see that really everywhere Deltas come through. You've seen that. So hopefully you're protected with preventative on the front end, but certainly if you do get exposed or get infected, what are you able to do here? And this monoclonal treatment is probably one of the best ways to be able to do it. It's important you do it early, though. If you wait till you're very, very ill and in need of hospital admission or intensive care, these antibodies at that point probably have missed their window to really nuke this. If you do it early, you just talk to some of the people going through these sites across the state. They will say 24, 48 hours, a lot of their symptoms have been resolved if they go in early. And so that's a really good thing. So some of those folks, I think we've done 10, 12,000 treatments just in the last few weeks since we've been doing the sites, and we're doing thousands every day. Just think, a lot of those folks, or certainly some of those folks, would have needed to be admitted to a hospital had they not had access to that treatment. And so it's good for people's health, which is the most important thing, but it also makes sure that you're not having admissions continue to explode, and that takes a lot of stress off the hospital. This is a treatment that's free to the patient. The Regeneron was purchased by the federal government, so everything, the whole stock was bought. And whatever Florida draws down, whatever is administered, is not charged to the patient. So people will talk about thousands of dollars. Just understand that's misinformation. You're not going to be charged thousands of dollars. How much it costs the taxpayer, you could look that up, but that, whatever it was, it's done. So we have it, and we might as well use it, and that's the philosophy. There's another, the Eli Lilly monoclonal is not done as well against Delta. There is one with GlaxoSmithKline. That is not something the feds have purchased or anything, so that it's available in much more limited numbers from what we can tell in Florida, but it would be just like any other drug on the market to be able to do. But this Regeneron is something that you're going to be able to have. So we encourage people, if you are infected, particularly if you are in a high-risk group, this is something that's got a proven track record. Now, the folks who generally qualify under the emergency use authorization, are folks who are older, people that may have immune system deficiencies, people who are overweight. I think it's a BMI of 25. People who are diabetic, people who have kidney problems, chronic heart or lung conditions. So when you think of that, really, if you're probably 50 or above, you're probably going to qualify on this. And of course, if you look, the hospitalizations overwhelmingly skew 50 and above. And of course, the mortality skews, much older with this virus than in other ones like H1N1. So if you are in those risk groups, this can really make a difference, and we want to make sure that you have the ability to access that. So if you want to get more information on where you can find treatments near you, you can go to floridahealthcovid19.gov. So they'll be starting tomorrow morning, 21 different sites operating in Florida 7 days a week. There's also, though, other ways to get the monoclonals. As I've said, the health systems have been offering this, and so we've tried to space this out around the state so that most people have the ability to get here in a relatively reasonable car drive. It's not going to be 5 minutes from everyone, but hopefully we have it so that not very many people need to drive 2 or 3 hours. However, if it's not as convenient for you, these are not the only way you can get the monoclonals. Most hospitals are offering them, other doctors are offering. I think actually some of the emergency, Ken was talking about, some of them are starting to offer it as well. So FloridaHealthCovid19.gov has the sites. There's also other sites that have been offering it all along. And if you want to make an appointment, you can go to patientportalfl.com, where you'll be able to go. This site in Leon should be live on that website soon. All the other sites are live, and you're able to do it. We did have a question on 1 or 2 of the sites about people being booked out 4 or 5 days in advance. We've worked with that to try to address that. At the end of the day, this is a time-sensitive treatment. We want to be getting people in, particularly the high-risk people, in immediately. Now, obviously, if you're fully booked, that's one thing, but we've encouraged the folks on the ground to, to make sure that you're getting as many people in as you can, as soon as you can. So these are, this is making a difference. And Ken Scheppke will talk about some of it. If you get it early, it's got a great record, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve your symptoms satisfactorily. And again, what we're trying to do, reduce the need for hospitalization, take this from, between having the 3 vaccines available and then between having a monoclonal, you can really take this and make it something that's more consistent with like a flu level risk. But you got to avail yourselves of it, and you got to make sure that that you're doing it early. So we look forward to being able to serve patients here. We think it'll be obviously Collier, but some of the surrounding counties. This is one to kind of get some of those more rural areas as well. And we obviously welcome from wherever you come from. Come on in and help yourself if you need the help. All right, I'm going to bring up Ken Scheppke to say a few things about what we're doing as well.
Thank you, Governor. Unfortunately, it does look like COVID-19 is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, so we really do need 2 strategies. Obviously, the prevention arm, the vaccines are our best prevention strategy, and then we need our treatment arm. And now, thanks to the governor's rollout of this, we now have wide availability to this treatment. So for the vaccines, I know a number of folks wanted to wait and see some extra safety data, especially some of the pregnant women. That's quite understandable. And I'm hoping that folks will now be a little reassured that we've got full FDA approval now on the Pfizer vaccine. And now, thanks to some recent safety data on pregnant women, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the Society for Maternal and Fetal Medicine have both come out strongly in favor of advising pregnant women to go ahead and get that vaccine. So if you haven't looked at that recently and you haven't been vaccinated yet, I encourage you to go ahead and take a look at that and see if that might encourage you to get the vaccine. But the vaccine takes up to 6 weeks to develop that protection. And that's not going to help you if you get infected today. And that's really where the treatment arm comes in, and that's where these monoclonal antibodies are so important, because they can give you effective treatment against the virus immediately. These antibodies will immediately attack the virus, get it out of your system, improve your outcome, and as the governor said, early is better than later. Like everything else in medicine, early treatment is better than later. It's more effective then. We've heard dozens of stories all around the state of people having great outcomes. And one story that really sat with me was a woman who went to our Jacksonville site, and her picture was all over the news. She was so sick, she just couldn't stand up. She laid on the ground, and someone snapped a picture of that. And I had the privilege of getting to speak with her. And she really tells us that she thinks Regeneron saved her life. Her mother had seen one of the governor's press conferences and learned about the monoclonal antibodies. That's how she knew to come and get it. And she got there really sick, and now she tells me she thinks she would have been one of the people in the ICU on the ventilator and perhaps even died. And she very well may be right. So for someone like that, I would encourage you, if you're high risk, don't wait until you're really bad. Go ahead and get early. As the governor mentioned, we vastly increased the access across the state, not just with our sites, but emergency departments are doing it, fire rescue EMS agencies are doing it, urgent care centers are doing it. So please avail yourself of that. Thank you, Governor.
Okay. So tomorrow, 0900, doors will be open. Obviously, they'll be accepting appointments, and they will be doing walk-ups. And then also Tallahassee will have a site open as well. So that'll be 21 sites, up to 300 plus treatments on every single one of those. So that's thousands of people a day, which it is making a difference, but obviously will be continue to make a difference going forward. So I'd urge everybody who fits this criteria, particularly if COVID is something that you have a specific risk for. If you do find yourself testing positive, you come in here. Also, we for nursing homes, we've had more nursing homes cases, and if you have that, this is something where you can have a strike team go in and apply treatment to folks there. And, our nursing home residents are almost all vaccinated, but you still have breakthrough cases. And these are some of the folks that are the most vulnerable. And, the vaccine may help them, but it may not be providing them 100% protection. And so if they are infected, this would be an option that they could avail themselves as well. So we'd encourage you to do it. Okay, take some time. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Brennan Leslie, Florida Voice. I got two questions for you. The first one, your opposition, both Democrats and some of the media, have politicized this treatment, and it's kind of sent a fake narrative out to the people out there that need this treatment. How wrong are they about that, and what is the impact of that on our community?
So it's sad that with COVID, from really the very beginning, it's been politicized, particularly by a lot of national corporate media outlets, and it's got to stop. So this monoclonal, this is not anything that I dreamt up. This is something that got an emergency use authorization. It was given, when in the experimental phase, it was given to the President of the United States when he had COVID. It's been used. The trial data is good. People have had great experiences with it, and we saw that this was being underutilized. We saw that there were patients, most of these patients going in, most of them were not vaccinated. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you're infected, what do you do? And so if they had better knowledge of this, a lot of them would have availed themselves of this. And so there was a thought out there by some that, this is going to cost you a lot of money, or this is just for some, they were talking about, trying to help Regeneron, the profit. They've already sold all this. There's no anything that's happening. So fake narratives, I think, are very harmful. It can potentially convince some people that this is not a viable option. Again, no one's forced to do this. It's your choice. You've got to make the best decisions for you. But if you do find yourself, with COVID, what are the options to be able to do? And the fact is, this was underutilized. Even Fauci said it was underutilized. He acknowledged that. And so that's what the name of the game is, helping people. It does have a track record of doing it. As Dr. Scheppke said, we have a woman who was in really bad shape in Jacksonville. She got it within 48 hours. She was feeling better and said she wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for that. So I would hate to see politicization of a treatment end up dissuading somebody from avail themselves of something that could help them. It could help keep them out of the hospital. It could even help save their life. So don't be that guy that lets your partisan agenda overcome providing good, accurate information and providing access to treatments for people who may need it. And hopefully we're beyond some of those games, but I can tell you, this has made a difference for people. It has made a difference the whole time, but now there's a much broader segment of society that understands this is available. I would talk to people who are very, very well versed in a lot of stuff with COVID. They had no idea what the monoclonals were. And then when we talked to the hospital, say, hey, the people that are being admitted, how many of them got this treatment? They're like 90+% never got it. And so we started thinking to ourselves, okay, this can really make a difference. And so please, it's a strong track record. It's been endorsed by the two most recent presidential administrations. Doctors all across Florida and the country have used it and used it very effectively.
And that same opposition is saying that there's some science that vaccine passports would end the pandemic. Is there any science that actually backs that up?
So the question on these vaccine passports is, okay, our view from the beginning on vaccine, we want to make it available to all, but we want to mandate it for none, because I don't know your circumstances. You have to make decisions. For example, we were the first state to go into nursing homes with vaccines, and we had strike teams prior to CVS and Walgreens being ready to do it. And the reason why we did that was these are the most vulnerable folks to COVID, are these nursing home residents. They're elderly, they have a lot of comorbidities generally, and so we wanted to get them that vaccine to be able to obviously protect them, but then liberate them to have a more normal existence so they're not always concerned about COVID. So we went in, did it. Many of these seniors were so happy. People were crying. But you know what? There were some that just didn't want to take it. That was their decision. And, my view is let's make it available. Let's provide it. But ultimately, it's the individual's decision. And so the flip side of that is you shouldn't be penalized and not be able to participate in society because you've made a choice. People have recovered from COVID and do have immunity, and that's not recognized when you start talking about doing some of these mandates. It's very unscientific. I mean, the science would say that if you've recovered from COVID, you've got immunity, and it's proven to be pretty doggone durable. There was a study just out of Israel that was really, really strong in terms of this. And so you can understand if somebody has recovered, why they may make. There's other people. One of the ladies that we helped with this, she had a medical condition, so she wasn't really a good candidate for some of the mRNA vaccines. Why should we second guess that and impose a mandate on her or not let her go to a restaurant or some of these other things? And then I think also just the theory behind some of the vaccine passports was that the vaccines would provide sterilizing immunity, kind of like an MMR vaccine. Well, we're obviously seeing that's not true. I mean, the protection is really against severe illness. You do have people that are getting infected who are vaccinated. That is not rare. That has actually been pretty common, and I think you're going to continue to see it become more and more common. So the idea that, because they said, there were some said if 50% of adults were vaccinated, you wouldn't see any waves. Well, in Florida, if you combine the 18 and over with the people that have recovered from COVID, you're well over 70%. You're almost 90% of seniors. You're over 82, 83% of people 50 and up just on vaccination. Then you add the people that are there. So clearly, it's not producing that type of herd immunity that we had hoped for, because the hope was if enough people got vaccinated, then it would not it would kind of fade into the background. Israel is one of the most vaccinated places on earth, and they're having a big surge this summer as well. Some of our I was just in the villages in Sumter County, very high vaccination rate, very elderly population, and they've had a wave. So that's just what the science is telling us, what the data is telling us. So forcing people to show papers or do that, that's something that is not allowed in Florida. We didn't think it made sense, but clearly what's happened shows you're not recognizing natural immunity. That's anti-science. And then if you're trying to act like this is providing sterilizing immunity, that's just not what the data tells us. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's becoming harder for people in Florida to get a COVID test. Are you considering bringing back mass testing sites like the one we had at St.
So we, a lot of in fact, I think the county was really involved in that one. And so, the county governments have gotten a lot of CARES Act money. I know they've invested in different types of testing. We've sent tests to people who've asked for them in terms of some of these rapid tests. But there are a lot of ability to get these things at pharmacies and at drugstores. Also, the health departments still do it. So we think that there's a big infrastructure. We think our resources and manpower doing what we're doing now with these sites, we're filling a void that needed to be filled. And there's the hospitals and stuff, they're doing it, but they're not doing enough that I think really is going to meet the demand. So we think the thing that has the most impact to keep people out of the hospital, save lives, is to really make sure this early treatment is something that people have access to. 21 sites. It's not easy to run them. It's a lot of manpower that goes into it, and we've been able to set these up very quickly, and it's something that I think has got to be, as Dr. Scheppke said, the hope was maybe this thing would just fade into the background at some point, but I think we see even with massive numbers of people vaccinated, you still have prevalence, you still see it spreading. Obviously, in the southern part of the U.S., we've just had, a big wave, but you're starting to see it increase in other parts of our country and around the world. So you just have to understand it's going to be part of life. And there's ways to protect yourself on the front end. There's also ways to treat yourself on the back end, and it would involve using the monoclonals. Yes?
This COVID wave is different than last year's, with Florida averaging 228 deaths per day or every week. On your watch, are you thinking of a different COVID strategy other than these sites?
Well, this is a groundbreaking strategy that we've done. I think most people have looked at it and said that that's smart, and that will help keep people out of the hospital. We also, of course, put in a lot of effort into vaccinating our vulnerable population. So if you look, we've done 4 million seniors. I think 82% of people 50 and over, which represents the overwhelming majority of hospitalizations and mortality from this. So there's a lot of protection there, but obviously the Delta waves, I mean, they really pop much harder than the previous waves because it's much more infectious. And so that's why these sites are basically recognizing when you have an airborne pathogen like this, okay, you're going to have cases, so how can you help the people who are going to be, fortunately, most people just deal with it as a matter of course, particularly people who are younger, particularly people that are in good health. But obviously, when you start talking about these comorbidities, when you start talking about age, even vaccinated people, it really does make a difference to be able to have this option. And so I think this is helping keep people out of the hospital. I think that'll be even more apparent, you know, as we get into the next couple of weeks, and I think people will see that in the data. But I also think had more people known about this from the beginning, I definitely think you would have had fewer people end up hospitalized to begin with. So now the awareness is higher. People understand that this is an option, and the availability is pretty good throughout. I mean, we have a very big state. We have a lot of different population centers. I mean, there's some states where you have 1 or 2 population centers and you can kind of handle everything. Here, it's a little bit different. So we've had to go and try to get it into as many areas as we can that'll be as convenient to people as we can. This supplements the existing infrastructure, but this is really, really adding a lot to what had been available. And I'd say the majority of people that come through these sites did not know about the monoclonal antibodies, you know, from the beginning. That's just the reality. I think that there was a hesitancy on some of the higher ups, particularly in the federal government, to talk a lot about them. And I think that was probably a mistake. And so now we want everyone to know what's out there, and I think the results have been very encouraging.
This disproportionately also affected the minority community last year. So why is it so important to have this type of treatment center in a place like Immokalee?
Well, we have it absolutely. I mean, you know, this is open for everybody. We want to get in all the different communities. Obviously, you start talking about a place like Immokalee. Yes, hospital systems are offering it, but you know, there may not be as much infrastructure here as there would be in other parts of the state. I mean, there's some hospital systems that crank out a lot of these treatments, and that's great, but that's not true for every corner of the state. And so I think being here will be really a force multiplier. It also gets into more of our rural areas, even outside of Collier County.
How about when unvaccinated people that get the treatment, how long do they have to wait after they get the treatment in order to get vaccinated?
What is that, Ken? It's
90 days.
90 days, yeah. So if you're not vaccinated and you get the treatment, get it. We think it'll help you. But because they're the antibodies and everything, the recommendation is if you then you know, do one of the vaccines, you wait 90 days. Now, at the same time, it's important to point out this is for people who are have breakthrough cases and are vaccinated or unvaccinated. It's not. It can be beneficial for both. And the reason why that's something important to just point out is because we have the overwhelming majority of our most vulnerable population to COVID have been vaccinated. And many of them were vaccinated many, many months ago. Whether the protection wanes on some of this, obviously, if they're going to push booster shots, the implication is that there's been a waning, at least in the protection against infection. Data comes in on that, and from Israel, other places. But bottom line is, you know, if you're somebody in this vulnerable category, if you're vaccinated, you still may get infected. We're seeing that. They call them breakthrough cases, but honestly, that kind of implies that they're rare, and they're really not that rare. I mean, I think almost everyone knows in Florida people that are vaccinated who have tested positive. Now, most of them end up with very mild symptoms, which is good, and I think that's because you are getting some some assistance from the vaccine. However, the people who are more elderly, the people that have health problems, that could help them a lot, but they still may need an antibody treatment to make sure that they don't end up hospitalized. And we did have, you know, a lot of the vaccinated seniors that would be hospitalized handled it much better than they did last summer when they would go in. And so you do see that, but you may even be able to keep it short of that. So if you are not vaccinated, get this treatment, wait your 90 days. If you are vaccinated but you're vulnerable and you do test positive, this is something that could, could potentially be good for you. And then, of course, nursing homes, places where there's a lot of people vulnerable, if there is somebody that tests positive, we can have a strike team go in and help the other folks who may have just been exposed, may not have even tested positive, and this will actually help in a prospective way as well there. So there's a lot to recommend in terms of this. And then just final thing because Dr. Scheppke mentioned it, if you're in an area with high prevalence, if you got, and you're not vaccinated, you got vaccinated today, great, but the protection does take some time to kick in. And so if you're in that window where you get infected, this is obviously something, the monoclonals, that you should still have an interest in. So we think that this is going to be great. I mean, if you look throughout on kind of the western side of Florida, we're here, we're in Bonita Springs, we're in Englewood, we're in Bradenton, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Pasco, and then obviously into the Panhandle. There's a lot. So there's a lot of options for people, and we're doing thousands and thousands of these a day. And I think if you do 1,000 people with treatment, if they're high risk, 70% reduction in hospitalizations, that's serious. A number of people. Unfortunately, we've seen the admissions, the admissions aren't as high today as they were a couple weeks ago, and obviously they need to go a lot lower, but we think this is an important part of getting that done. Okay, thanks everybody, we appreciate it.